Hello everybody, today I am driving an example of the Lexus LS, quite possibly the finest automobile ever made, and proof, if ever it were needed, that the Italians should be very, very grateful the Japanese have rarely ever even thought about making a supercar. Enjoy. The story of the Lexus LS is an incredible one, and it's a shining example of how, in automotive terms at least, when the Japanese put their minds to something, there is absolutely nothing that will stop them from achieving their goals. The origins of the Lexus LS begin in the early 1980s, when Toyota began a project codenamed F1. It was their attempt at building a luxury car designed for the export market. They already built high-end saloons in the form of the Crown and the mighty Century, but that in particular was aimed exclusively at the Japanese market. You see, up until that point, though Japanese cars had certainly been increasing in popularity, it was mainly for their smaller economical cars and occasionally sporty ones too. The F1 project was aimed to take the fight to the likes of the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the BMW 7 Series, and the top-flight American saloons, the Cadillacs and the like, of the day. Knowing that failure was not to be an option, they had thousands of people go to work over a period of 6 years, in which they spent over $1 billion developing the ultimate saloon car, the LS. They were so keen to make a statement with this car, they even went to the lengths of creating an entire new brand just to sell it. That was the origins of Lexus. In their home market, the brand didn't arrive until some 15 years later with the LFA. But abroad, they wanted people to know this was no ordinary Toyota. For that reason, it shared essentially no components whatsoever with any other Toyota product. They even created an all-new engine, the legendary 4-litre 32-valve quad-cam 1UZ, the first V8 in the world to be certified an ultra-low-emission engine over in America. They then packed it with luxury features, top-quality materials, and cutting-edge technology. And to seal the deal, it was then sold at a price that was so low, their competitors accused them of selling it at below cost. The LS430, as it became known, quickly found favour with both journalists and later customers too. But there was one event in particular which I think really underlines just what made Lexus so special and is almost certainly responsible for cementing their reputation in the United States. It was December of 1989. The car hadn't been on sale for all that long, but two customers had experienced an issue, one of whom had a fault with their cruise control, and the other had suffered a brake light failure. Lexus opted to recall every single one of the 8,000 cars they had sold up until that point. But more than that, in order to not inconvenience their customers, they made sure that the cars were collected from the homes of the owners, taken back to the dealership, fixed and returned. For the 10 people in Grand Rapids, Michigan who'd bought one, because they were so far away from a dealer, Lexus instead sent out technicians to get the cars, fix them, wash them and return them. In a space of just 20 days, Lexus fixed every single one of the cars they had delivered. And so, with that, the reputation of Lexus as a company that not just built quality products, but also genuinely cared about its customers was carved in stone forever. Unfortunately, here in Britain, we've never really held them in anywhere near the esteem that I think they deserve. I have in my life only been to a Lexus dealer, I think, 3 times, and on each occasion it was one of the most pleasant dealership experiences I have ever had. One in particular I should mention is Stephen Eagle of Ipswich, and there was another dealer whose brand I cannot remember over in Milton Keynes. Both were thoroughly pleasant, absolutely brilliant to deal with, and though I walked in their door not having even phoned them, I was made to feel like I'd been a customer of theirs for decades. I was made to feel like a member of the family. This, I know, is something that Lexus in particular really pride themselves on, but it is something I can say is not just marketing gumph. They mean it and they believe it. However, for whatever reason, in spite of all this, because Lexus isn't German, and let's be honest here, Britain historically probably has as many reasons to be distrustful of Germany as America does Japan, They just haven't ever done that well here, and so that is why today you can pick up an example of this, the 3rd generation LS, the 430, for as little as £2,500. And for that, you'd be getting one of the greatest cars ever made. Let me talk you through the ingredients list. The 2nd generation LS was also the 400. It was a minor restyling compared with the 1st gen, and some said it was too minor, a little bit too subtle. So for this, they went a little bit extra, and I think in some ways they went a little bit too far. I wouldn't really call it a pretty car, and in this silver from many angles, I think you'd be entirely forgiven for mistaking it for a Mercedes of the late 90s and early noughties. However, luxury cars have rarely been particularly pretty things, so let's set that aside. Up front, you had just one choice of engine, which was a 4.3 litre evolution of the old 1UZ, now badged the 3UZ. It makes 300 horsepower and 320 pound-foot of torque. That's about 424 newton meters. It is connected to a 5-speed automatic gearbox and drives exclusively the rear wheels. This car also has air suspension, and down here you have a little row of toggles in which you can engage normal or sport mode for the chassis, you can have normal or high for the ride, and you can even put it in power or snow mode for the drive, which essentially changes the behavior of the gearbox. The interior was allegedly inspired by the likes of top-end hotels such as the Ritz-Carlton, and the seats by those in a first-class airline such as British Airways. I have to say, when people quote stuff like that it does feel like utter and total dross. Just about nothing in here really reminds me of being in a hotel room, but it is a very, very luxurious way to travel. The spec and features list of this car is impressive even today, 22 years after it rolled out of the factory gates. So you have a DVD-ROM based navigation system here, which was quite trick for the day. It will speak to you. You have multi-zone climate control. You've got heated and ventilated seats front and rear, automatic windows on all 4 corners, sunroof. You have cruise control, which in later cars was also radar guided. You have many-way adjustment for the seats at the front. Those in the rear will also recline. You have manually operated blinds in the back for the left and right, with a power one for the rear. There is also a little cool box for your drinks in the back, and the boot is a very good size too. And to complete the luxury feel, you've got soft closed doors and double glazing. This is a really rather splendid way to get about, and I would have to say that even for a sporty driver such as myself, this car does hold a lot of appeal. Unlike the German rivals, where you'd have any number of different engine and trim combinations to choose from, with this generation of LS there was essentially this. There were a few things that were optional, including the Mark Levinson premium sound system that you didn't get with every trim, and is absolutely sensational. But just about everything in here is standard. When you consider the fact it was priced equivalently to, say, a Mercedes S320 or a BMW 740 rather than the top-end V12 models, it really is incredible value. It also feels so solid, this thing. The only creaks and rattles and things moving about are a couple of CDs that I know down here. Oh, and I think a pen that's just vanished over there as well. There's huge big door bins down here. The boot is a great big size. The rear legroom for passengers in the back is just about perfect. The car is 5 meters long, so it's far from small, but it is considerably shorter than, say, a long wheelbase 7 Series or S-Class of the day. Though the little digital elements down here are, well, let's be honest, quaint and a little bit out of date, the rest of it being analog and elegantly illuminated is, I think, really nice and classy. And in some ways, I think analog dials will age a lot better than digital screens. The gearbox is actually also a really pleasant surprise. When you consider it's a 5-speed auto from 22 years ago, you don't really have very high expectations for it. However, it is quite responsive, it is incredibly smooth, but perhaps most importantly, when you get to a junction, something like this, the combination of a torque converter auto and a nice big naturally aspirated engine just cannot be beat. This thing off the line is really quite quick. It would embarrass many a supercar, this thing, in the all-important sort of 0 to 20 mile an hour dash that is far more relevant, let's be honest, around town and in many real-world scenarios than a top speed of 200 mile an hour or so. The controls for the throttle and the brake are deliberately progressive, meaning you can modulate them nicely and easily, and if you're ferrying people about in the back playing chauffeur, you can deliver a luxury experience. The car I'm driving today is a particularly good example of the breed. It is a 2001 and has been brought to me by long-time collaborator and fan of the channel, Brad, who is definitely the top of my leaderboard when it comes to number of cars featured on the channel. It was originally purchased by a gentleman who had it from new up until about 2013 when he passed away. Then Brad's father bought it, had it for a few years, did a few miles in it and decided to sell it. Brad, having one eye on it and not really wanting to let it go, decided to buy it for himself, and in the time since has covered another sort of 10 or 15,000 miles and by his own admission treats it like a classic. It is garaged, it is taken out on nice days, and I have to say, it is a testament to him. This thing looks and feels showroom fresh. It may have 73,000 miles on the clock, but I actually would also believe you if you told me it only had 73 full stop. The ride I must give particular praise to. Many other manufacturers of the time were using air suspension in their luxury cars, from Jaguar to Mercedes, but not all of them successfully. The Jags in particular, they just never really had that edge of plushness that you'd really want from a proper luxury car. They're always a little bit too firm. This, though it certainly has a slightly firmer edge than you might expect, is still very comfortable, exceptionally well damped, and in America you apparently could actually get these with a sporty suspension setup as well. As I suppose I really should give it a go, I'm going to put the car into sport and power mode, put my foot down, and I shall tell you what it's like through a series of twisty bends. As I'm not quite there yet though, I think I'm going to put the cooled seats on just to chill me down a little bit. I also want to give mention to the fact that the car has been averaging 22 to the gallon. That's only after I've had a little bit of fun with it. Before it was doing sort of 26 or 27, which for an old-fashioned 4.3 litre V8 and a 1.9 tonne car, I think that's pretty good. All right, here we go. I'm going to talk you through this because there is no exhaust camera on the car. Ooh, nice little bit of V8 rumble does come through. The gearbox takes a moment because it changes and then changes again when you put your foot down. The steering is a little on the slower side, but you would expect that with a car like this. With the suspension in sport mode, the car is a lot flatter through the bends. It doesn't really feel noticeably firmer. It can gather the speed. It's not really that quick, this thing, but I'd be lying if I said it was especially fast. In period, I believe the 0 to 60 time was quoted at about 6.6 seconds, and that feels right. Brakes are good. Car feels nice through the corners. Oh, lovely. Brad tells me that contemporary reports of the time often compared this with the Nissan equivalent, the Shimmer or President. And for the Shimmer, which was the more sporting version of the two, they said that that was a better looking car with perhaps the nicer interior, but in terms of the drive, the Lexus had it. In its home market, Lexus having not arrived, these were sold as the Toyota Celsior, and though it really doesn't seem like it's worth it, I have known a few people actually import those over just for the sort of JDM cool factor that it brings. Speaking of which, that seat is rather nice and chilly. I'm just going to dial it back a couple of notches. And here's the thing, this car really does give you just about everything that most people would ever conceivably need. It's somewhat understated in its looks, and I get if you don't want to buy it because of that. I've often felt the same way. However, you've got nice, naturally aspirated V8 engine up the front. Not just nice, actually. One of the greatest V8s of all time. These are famed for their legendary reliability. Matt Farah had a 1 million mile example of an early LS430, and I've no doubt whatsoever that well-treated one of these could easily achieve the same. The gearbox, okay, also I'm sure that'll put a few people off, and I'm no doubt there's someone out there going, oh, I wish they'd sold it with a manual, but it's a top-end luxury car. When they did offer them with manuals, no one bought them. The facelift car, which arrived in 2003, did bring with it a 6-speed, so if you want a slightly better gearbox, I would say go for one of those. The fuel economy, as already mentioned, is decent for what it is, and unfortunately, if you want a more economical option, there wasn't one. The interior, though, is sensational, and short of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, this has got just about everything you would ever need. The ride quality is exceptional. Okay, finding pieces for it can sometimes be tricky. This car had a subwoofer that had died and 2 speakers that needed replacing. Finding parts was an issue. In the end, they had to be imported, and it cost hundreds of pounds to fix. But Brad wanted to do it right, and I'm glad he did, because the stereo is excellent. Though the LS has always been a car that depreciated quite heavily, and that then did attract a certain crowd who are buying into them just because they were cheap, easy power, there's still also enough examples out there that have been looked after, well cared for and maintained by people that really do care about them. And the good news is that though a cheap example of one of these at £2,500 is probably a car you want to avoid, the most expensive LS430 for sale at the moment on Auto Trader is £7,000, which is vaguely similar money to what you're going to pay for an S-Class or 7 Series or Jaguar of the time. But honestly, I'm pretty certain this is going to be by far the easiest of all of those to live with. It is extraordinarily quiet in here, really quite well refined. They got the coefficient of drag in this down to 0.25, which is superb. Followers of the channel will know that I am on the hunt for a nice, sensible 4-door saloon, and because I am an idiot and keep looking at sporty things, M5, M6s, Maseratis and the like, but then I get in this and I go, James, you don't need anything more. And this isn't me going, oh, well, you know what, I just have to put up with the Lexus, I suppose. It sort of does what I need. This is a ruddy, brilliant car. And you have to remember that this car, the Lexus LS, this was built by the world's biggest, at various points in time, car maker, Toyota, and built to the highest standards. And more than that, by the time this car came around, there were other models in the Lexus lineup, but this was always the flagship. So in other words, in automotive terms, this is the best of the best of the best with honours. And you can have it for the same price as a smart car. You know, here in Britain, we're stupid. We kept buying 5 and 7 Series instead of these. I mean, this is roughly equivalent in size to a modern 5 Series. I mean, it's just brilliant. Need I say more? I don't know. What do you think? Hop into the comment section and let me know. Huge thank you to Brad for bringing his car out once again, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.